Hello everyone and welcome to Clarity 16.1.3 Feature Supportability Training. I am Vib Mehrotra, and as part of this section we will be talking about the general improvements made within the Clarity application. As part of this release, the following general product improvements have been made. This list that is being discussed is not all inclusive, which means there are definitely quite a few other places where changes are made. However, the items that we are talking in this section are just the general ones that did not fit in the other sections. So specifically, some of the things that were improved as part of this release are ability to delete pick lists created by others, option to send process-based action item notification to either modern UX or classic UI, increase the name field for risk issues and changes to 256 characters, ability to generate and share a URL directly to a saved view, retain a board view expand collapse state per user, and alert when a data requires refreshing within the object instance page. Picklist has been one of the most frequently used functionality in Clarity, where any user can create a picklist. However, over the period of time, administrators have mentioned that trying to maintain these picklists is a problem, and they wanted a way to be able to manage slash delete those picklists. Customers moving to modern UX want the users to be able to go into modern UX to act on their action items rather than the classic UI. Customers integrating with risk issues and changes data with external application wanted their name length to be the industry standard size rather than the current limited number that they had. Customers have also asked for the ability to share a link to a specific view to avoid any confusion on what the target user is looking for. Customers that use board view want the capability to retain their collapse/expand state so that they do not have to readjust it every time they navigate away and then come back. And finally, customers that want the capability to notify the users when their data is outdated, they wanted an easier way for that to be done within the Clarity application itself. So let's first start off with the ability to delete a pick list created by others. So as part of this release, we are introducing a new security right, which is the picklist-administer. This is a global right that once granted to a specific user, then that user will have the capability to delete any pick list within the Clarity Modern UX. The picklist owner can, of course, continue to be able to delete their own picklist at any point and do not require this right. But if the user wants to delete picklists created by others, then this right will be required. The picklist deleted will be removed from all the views, as well as all picklist specific data will also be removed when the delete process is performed. This was one of the customer innovative ideas that has gone through the process, and now we are delivering it. The next is the action item link to modern UX. Customers have asked that they want their end users to, when they receive an email based on an action item, to be able to navigate it to modern UX to act on it rather than the classic UI. To achieve that functionality, we are now introducing a new flag in the system options. This new flag, which is available under the system options new user experience setting, and is called direct process action item notification links to new user experience. This flag, when unchecked, which will be the default state after an upgrade, this flag, when unchecked, will continue to basically send the users to the classic UI to act on an action item, which is the same existing functionality as it is today. However, once this flag is checked, then any new action items generated from that point onwards will then send the user to the modern UX to act on those action items. One point to note, any previously action items that were sent prior to enabling this flag will continue to send the user to the classic UI. So as here you can see in the screenshot that once the user gets an email, they have the option to click here to go to the action item. Once this flag is enabled, that link will take the user to the modern UX My Workspace action item area where they can see their action items and they can act on those action items. We have also updated that if a user goes to the classic UI's notification and then from there click on to access the action item, then they too will be navigated to the modern UX, as you can see in the screenshot. We've also made the ability for when the action item is received by an end user, the parent where the action item was generated from, that link is available and will take the user to the modern UX page instance. The user will be navigated to the first module of the object instance, and for sub-object, the user will be navigated to the first module of the object instance if the sub-object is enabled properties navigation. This is a new setting that is available that once enabled in the blueprint for a specific sub-object module, then the user will be navigated to that specific sub-object's module. If it is not enabled, then the user will just be navigated to the grid view of the sub-object rather than the specific sub-object. The risk issues and changes name length has now been increased to 256 characters. This is the industry standard in regards to the name length. So now anybody that is creating an integration with this specific risk issues and changes will be able to generate the name up to 256 characters. No impact to any existing risk issues and changes because we are only increasing the length, so all the existing ones will continue to retain the name. The PII anonymize process is also updated to handle the name field length of 256 characters. Another customer innovative idea that came through the process and now we are delivering on it is customers had asked the ability that when they are within a specific object instance or a grid view, they would create a view or a saved view and would like to be able to share that specific saved view with others. Today, all they do is that they're able to copy the URL to the object instance and then ask the person with whom they're sharing to then change the view manually. This has caused some frustrations with the customer and hence this idea was created. And now we are providing the capability to support that idea, which is now we have the ability to generate a link to a specific saved view within the object instance. This link is going to be encoded with base 64. This functionality is available everywhere where we have the saved views except for the pop-up modals. Any user with access to a specific saved view can generate the link using one of the three ways. They can use the link icon that is right next to the saved view, and that is right here. So if I have my saved view name, you will notice that starting 16.1.3, there is going to be a new icon right next to it. And that is where you can either one way of generating and copying the link to that saved view. The second is the copy link under the actions within the manage view. So if I go into my manage views, if I hover over the specific view, I will now have two actions available, in fact, three actions available. The share that always existed, the ability to delete if it is my own view or if I have the delete access right, and then the last is the copy link. So you can just hover over and click on it. The minute the user clicks on the copy link, either under the actions or in this icon, the URL is automatically copied to the user's clipboard. And then finally, the third option is under share. So if I go into my manage view, share, this modal will pop up where I can share my view, either keep it private, share it with everyone, or a specific group. Right below that, you can now see what the URL is. It's the encoded URL, as well as the ability to copy that URL to your clipboard. So these are the three ways how you can copy a generated link for a specific saved view under an object instance. Once the link is created to a saved view, the user that uses the link to navigate will go directly to the object instance and set the saved view to wherever the link was generated from. The link to a saved view does not grant the user access to the object instance. This means the generating a saved view is not allowing you to bypass any security rights. The user will still need access to the object, the navigational rights, and so on. Without those, the user will not be able to get to the saved view. The user receiving the saved view link can bookmark that link and then use it in the future to directly access a specific saved view. This also means that the user themselves that is generating the saved view link could just bookmark it themselves, so that if they wanted to access that view directly, they can do so by accessing it via the bookmark. Some additional details to be aware of regarding the saved view. Again, the key point here is that just because the user can generate a saved view link does not mean that they can grant access. So certain things to be aware of from an access perspective is as follows. Saved views you cannot generate a link for a unsaved mode of a saved view. Right? So if I go into my view and if I start making some changes, you would notice that the saved view becomes in an unsaved mode, with the name being italicized. At that point, the icon to generate the link to the saved view will be disabled because your saved view is an unsaved state. The Clarity security access will have precedence of the shared view link settings. For example, if the user that is using the link does not have object navigate right, then they will not be able to go to the link. If the custom investment access is not granted to the user, so for example, the user may have access to a specific CIT navigate view but does not have access to the custom investment navigate, which is the one right above it, then again the user will not be able to get to the saved view of a specific CIT. So access to the top level object but not access to the sub-object instance, then again the user will not be able to see it if they're trying to get to the sub-object instance. Saved view is deleted in certain situations. The user using the link will go to the workspace, assuming that the user has access to the workspace instance, and the system will then display the default saved view. So from an end user perspective, they'll just land in the default saved view rather than the view that for which the link was generated, because now that view itself has been deleted. Say if the saved view is made private or has been changed to private after the link was generated, then the user using the link will get a runtime error message displaying that they no longer have access to that saved view. Saved view, in case if it is renamed after the URL was generated, the user will still be able to navigate to the saved view. So the saved view name does not have any importance in regards to the URL that is being generated. Continuing on, in case of the saved view that includes attributes that have field level security to it, and the user that is using the link to access the saved view does not have access to look at some of those attributes, then those field level security rules will continue to apply. This is the same behavior if the user manually sets the view, which means those attributes that are hidden from a specific user will continue to remain hidden. They are not able to bypass it just because they have access to the saved view directly. User using the link to access a saved view where he or she is not part of a Clarity group assigned to the saved view. In that case, the user will be able to access the saved view in a temporary mode. So this is again, if I have a saved view and I share that saved view to only a specific group, and then I generate the URL to my saved view and share that with a user that does not belong to the group with which I have shared my view, the user that does not belong to it will still be able to access my view, but only by using the URL. They cannot access the view by trying to manually set it in the saved view pull down menu. Module is, in case if a module is hidden via business rules or the module is just hidden in the blueprint, then the user will be navigated to the workspace and will land on the first module that is available in that object instance. Next enhancement that we have done is customers that have been using the board view and now that have the capability that was introduced in the previous release where they can define not only just the columns but also the swim lanes, have asked the capability that when there's a large amount of data, they want to be able to collapse different columns or the swim lanes, and then when they navigate away and come back, that state to be maintained. Starting this release, we are going to provide that specific capability where now the user's collapse or expand state within a board view will be retained. This will be by user, by object, which means I can go into my project board view and collapse and expand a specific that view, and then go to roadmap and do the same within a roadmap. So whatever changes I'm making is saved for me within each one of those objects. The user can navigate away and come back, and the board column and swim lane collapse state will be retained and will be displayed for that user. If I expand and collapse these board views and then I save it, those changes are not saved as part of the view, which means if I share that view or generate a link and share it with somebody, the second user will not be able to see my collapse and expanded state. So that collapse and expanded state is only for me and not for everybody else. When a column is removed from the column or swim lane, the collapse persist status will be removed and it'll reset automatically. And finally, the last enhancement that we are making in this topic that we'll be covering is the ability to alert a user when a change is made by another user within the same object instance. This is the first iteration of this functionality. The scope of this functionality is going to be limited. It is not going to be available everywhere, but it is only going to be available in certain parts of the application. The outdated notification will happen when the user is in the properties page of the master object or in the detail flyout of an object instance. So only in those specific cases. If both the users are in the same object instance property page or in the same object instance detail flyout, then the users will be alerted when either one of the two users make a change. The user that gets alerted will get a notification that the page is out of date and will have the capability to refresh that page to receive the latest data. The user is alerted when the data is updated by another user using either the Modern UX or Classic UI, or if the data is updated by a process. The key thing with the process is that it should be using the process system actions to make the changes, or if the change is done in the process using a ZOG or an API, then those will be alerted. Any direct database access updates will not alert the user of the change. and the process should be executed by another user, which means if I as a user have two windows open and I'm making change in one window and I have the same object instance properties page in another window, I will not be alerted in the second window that I made a change. This is just for usability of the user, that they don't want to be alerted because they themselves are making a change. The same concept will apply for a process, that when a process runs behind the scenes and makes a change under the same user, then that user will not be alerted. The outData notification will only alert the user when the master object instance is updated and not its sub-object. So if I am in a project's properties page and another user goes into the same project's task page and makes changes to the task, then the first user is not alerted that their change is being made because the second user is making a change in the different parts, in this case the sub-object of that specific object. The user that has the option, the user does have the option to refresh the page or just close the alert and not refresh the page. If the user does refresh the page, then the following message is displayed that the data has been successfully updated. This functionality is only enabled in the Clarity implementation that uses the PPM broker service. So a few releases ago, the Clarity application had released PPM broker, and more details regarding the PPM broker service can be obtained from our tech docs. So any customer that, whether in whichever Clarity deployment it is, if they have deployed and configured the PPM broker correctly, then they will be able to leverage this functionality. A system administrator can validate if a PPM broker is up and running in their environment by navigating to the URL listed on the screen, which is niku nu actions security.service ping. When the user accesses that URL, the user should see the username and their user status, and if the information is received correctly, then that means the PPM broker is up and running. If that information is incorrect for that specific user or they get an error, that means the PPM broker is not running. They should work with the system administrators to have the PPM broker configured and run correctly. All right, with that, let's see the product in action. So here I am in Clarity 16.1.3, and the first demo that I'm going to do is going to be around how to manage the pick list. To do that, the first thing I'm going to do is to show you the new access right that is available. So I'm logged in as Ian, who's the administrator. I'm going to go into my studio, and in studio, when I go to the license information, right here I can search for the new access right, and there is a new access right. This is a global access right, and this access right will only be considered as a view only, and the user that have this access will be able to delete the pick list. So to see this in action, I'm going to use two different users. So on the left side, I have Ian Erpel, who's a user in the application, and I have on the right side a user called Dana Lewis. They both are accessing the same environment, and I'm going to first go ahead and go into my ideas, and as a user, I am going to create a new pick list. And I can assign it some color coding so that it's easier for me to see. So I have now just created a pick list called Ian's priority, which is a common scenario where users would normally just create their own pick list so that they can track their own data. For my, so there's my new priority. I can go ahead and add that as a column, and I can set that value for some of my object instances and so on. So I could continue to do that, but so I've created a new pick list for my ideas so that I can define what is my own priority. Let's look at the Dana's access rights. So I'm going back into Studio. As the administrator, I am looking at Dana's access right, and when I check for her global access right, right now Dana does not have the access to manage pick list. So let's go to Dana's side. Let's go to ideas. Let's right here as Dana, I could obviously add Ian's priority list, but maybe I don't want to use his, I want to use my own. Right, so there's his own priority list. I'm going to go ahead and add my own priority list. And I can do the same. And I could give it color coding, but I'm going to continue with just using this. So now I've created my own, but let's say if I didn't want to use Ian's and I just wanted to use mine and I want to delete Ian's. If I try to do that, since Dana does not have the access right, she should get an error message that she does not have the necessary access right. There she's been notified that she does not have the appropriate access right, and Ian's list is not deleted. It still remains in here. Maybe I instead of then deleting his, maybe I'll just delete my own. So Dana, who's the owner of the specific pick list without that access right, will continue to be able to manage, which is update or delete her own pick list. So I can do that, and you can see that Dana's pick list is deleted. All right, let's now grant Dana the access right. So again, back I am on the left side as the administrator managing Dana's access right. If I just go in here, add, there is the new access right. I'm going to grant that to her. Now Dana has the access right. I'm just going to log out and log back in as Dana so that she gets the latest access right. I'm landing in the default spot. I'm going to go back to ideas. And again, going into my view option, going in as the priority. Now that Dana does have the access right, if I try to delete Ian's priority list, I'm able to do so. So you can see that because Dana has the appropriate access right, now she's able to delete the pick list created by other users. All right. Next, let's look at the second functionality, which is the action items. To do this, I am first going to go into my system option. So under the administrator, when I look at my system options, if I scroll down, then under the new user experience, here is the flag, which is the direct process action item notification links to new user experience. By default, this is unchecked. That means the functionality will continue to remain as it does today to keep the user in the classic UI when they get the email notification. All right, so let's first see how it functions with this disabled. To do that, I'm going to leave this disabled, and I'm going to go in to my Modern UX. I'm going to go into my project, and I'm going to go to a specific project where I will trigger a process, which is a state stage gate process that will send notification to the manager within that project itself. So in this case, the manager is Dana Lewis. So I'm going to go inside my project and I'm going to kick off a process. Again, this is standard existing functionality as to how you can kick off process, so we will not cover that. But right here, I'm kicking off the stage gate approval process, which then sends the notification to the project manager. So right there, I have enabled that process. Let's go look at as Dana. So I'm going to go here. Under Dana, I'm just going to go first to the classic side, just to show the functionality as to how that works on the classic side. So right here within the classic, if I was to look at my action items, if I go under the organizer, let's make the screen big. Under notifications, I got the new action item for the Able project. It was started right now. Again, keep in mind the flag was unchecked, so that means when I click on this specific one, it takes me to the classic UI's action item page. All right. I will not act on that. I'm going to go back out. I, as a user, also got the email notification, which is right here. I got the email notification, and when I look at this email notification, I can click on this email, and clicking on that takes me to the classic UI action item, which is the same as me clicking on the link under the notification, right? So that link in the email sends me to the classic UI. So let's go ahead and act on this. And I'll go ahead and approve this specific one. I can close this page. Let's go back here and let's go ahead and go into the system option. And this time now let's enable how the functionality will work when the user can be navigated to the modern UX. So I'm going to enable that, save it. Now I'm going to go back as administrator to the same project. I'm going to kick off the same stage gate. Right, let's go into Dana again. If I go back to my organizer, I go into my notification. The new one is again kicked off. At this time, when I click on the click here, it should take me to the modern UX because I have the flag enabled. So let's do that. Clicking on it, it's opening up in the new tab the modern UX, and it took me directly to my workspace action items. And here I can see the new action item that came to me. I can act on it from right here. I can navigate to the project itself. But also let's look at the email that I received with this action item. So let's open that email. Here is the new email that I received. If I click on this link, it does the same thing. So now the email link to take the user to the action item now takes the user to modern UX action item, and there they can act on that specific action item. The same thing if I wanted to navigate to the page within that in that action item. If I wanted to go to the parent of that action item, I can do so by clicking on the parent name, and that'll take me to the first module for that specific parent. In this case, it is my project Able Payments, or I can just act on it from right here, which should then go ahead and close my action item. All right. Let's take Dana back to Mon UX. And to continue on, the next part of the demo was to show you the changes made to the risk issues and change length. So for that, I'm going to go back as Ian as the administrator. I'm going to go into the studio administration, and I'm going to go into the objects. In here, I can search for the risk object. I can open that up, and then I can go into the attributes. I can look at the name attribute, and opening that, you can see that now the maximum size allowed for the name attribute of risk is 256 characters. I can check the same for one more, which is let's look at issues. Navigating to the issues object, going to the attributes, and then opening name. You can see now the maximum size allowed is 256, and the same is also the case with changes, but we don't need to look at that one. All right, the next part of the demo, I wanted to display how the view sharing capability works using the new ability to generate a link to a saved view. For that, I'm going to go back here as Ian, and let's have our two side by side. So again, on the left, I have Ian, who's a user in the system, and on the right, I have Dana, who's also the user in the system. So I'm going to first, as Ian, going to go into my roadmaps, and I'm going to go into a specific roadmap, which is the digital banking product line map. In here, I'm going to set my view to IDA dashboard, right? And let's maybe maximize this for while I'm configuring my view. I'm going to just maximize my screen. So as Ian, I'm in my roadmap. I have my view set, and let's make some minor changes to this, which is I know that in 16.1.3 there is a new capability where I can group my my roadmap timeline view. I can now have swim lane groups. So I'm going to make that change. I'm going to hide my widgets, and I'm going to add to my view options the new swim lane group, and I want to group my data by goal. So there I have defined that I want to see my data in terms of the swim lanes being the line of efforts, and then the line of efforts gets broken down in terms of the goals itself. So there you can see that I have the data broken down. I can collapse these if I want to, and so on. So now I have the group by capability. Let's go ahead and expand it if I want to, and let's save this as a new view called IDA dashboard -Ian's grouping. Once this is saved, now if I wanted, let's go side by side again. Now I've created my view with my changes and stuff. If I wanted to share this with Dana, historically in the prior release, I would go right here. I would copy this URL. I would send it to Dana, asking her to access it, in which case she would just paste it over here. She would click on it, and she would land in whatever was her last view, and will come back to me asking the question, I don't see your grouping, I don't know what you're talking about. And we would have a back and forth to say, well, go ahead and change your view. Now I don't have to do all of that. I can generate a link directly to my saved view, and that's done in one of three ways. The first is this new icon right here that's called copy link. So right next to the view name, I have this copy link capability. I can click on that, and it tells me that the link is copied to my clipboard, and I can just basically send that link directly to Dana. The second way I can do that is I can go in to my view manager, and let's maximize this page. In the view manager, I can see that there is my view right there, and I can see the new copy link capability, which I can click on, and it does the same thing, that the link is copied to my clipboard. Or the last way to do it is I can go into share, and when I click on that, it gives me the option to share, which existed. I can look at my whole link right here, and you can see it is encoded, and I can just copy it from right here itself. So one of those three ways I can copy my link. So let's do that. I'm done. And then I can go into, I can share that link with Dana by either emailing it or IMing her, or I can just use the conversation, and I can say, I can just put it in the chat or in the conversation within within my roadmap itself, so that that link is now available not only just to Dana but to anybody else that's looking at my roadmap, right? So once I've done that, let's go back to Dana on the other side. So right here as Dana, I can go into conversation. I can see that Ian has now pasted a link that's saying this is where his new grouping is. Dana can click on that, and now that will take Dana directly to Ian's specific view. And let's maximize that so I can see this is all that was grouping that was done by right here. So based on the data that she can see all the different groupings that is done. And she can reply back. All right, continuing on, I'm going to go back in as Ian, and within my roadmap itself, the next thing is I'm aware that there is now the capability to retain the state of my board view. So I can go into my board view. I can see that there are the view is organized based on the columns, and maybe in here I can also add a swim lane for my goals. And once I do that, I see that the data is quite a few places. Maybe I just want to only focus on a specific thing, which is grow the business. So I can collapse the cost reduction. I can even collapse the infrastructure and all the other ones. And in growing the business, maybe I'm only concerned about the empowerment of my workforce. So I can collapse the other ones, other columns in this list. So now I can see exactly what needs to be done to grow the business by empowering my workforce. This is the state I want my board view to be in, so I can navigate away. Let's just say I go to investments, and then I can come back to my roadmap, go back to my digital banking, and when I land back in my board view, I land exactly where I had left it, which is I can now see my collapsed state of my board view. So this was the next enhancement that was done. All right, and then finally, the last enhancement that I wanted to cover was in the area of outdated notification to the end user. For this, I'm going to go back into my side-by-side view. Again, on the left side, I have Ian as my user, and on the right side, I have Dana as the user. I'm going to go in as Ian to a specific project, I'm going to go into the Able Payments project, and on the right side as Dana, I'm also going to go into the same project, which is the Able Payments module. Now, as both the users are in the same object instance, if Ian as a user makes a change to the objective, and once that data is saved, you would see that on the right side, Dana automatically got alerted that the page is out of date. So this alert popped up right away as soon as I tabbed away as Ian from that field that I'd modified. At this point, as Dana, I can either close my notification, that means I can ignore the changes that were done, or I can say refresh, and by doing so, I can see the new changes that Ian typed have now appeared on my screen. All right. Let's continue on with the same. So as Dana, I will remain on the same page, but as Ian, I'm going to go back out. I'm going to go into my grid view, and in grid view, I'm going to expand the details flyout. So right here as Ian, I'm using the grid view. I'm going to expand the detail flyout. Now going back as Dana, I'm going to make additional changes. All right. And the minute Dana tabs out of this to save the changes, you will notice that Ian will be alerted within the detail flyout that there is a change and that the data is outdated. All right, so let's go do that. Let's tab out of here. There, it took a few seconds, but there Ian got alerted that the data is out of date, and Ian has the same option. He can either refresh the page or ignore it. So I'm going to go ahead and refresh it, and now I can see Dana is also adding more information, has been updated for me. So you can see how the functionality works while I am within the properties page. If both the users are in the properties page of that object instance or in the detail flyer of that object instance, then they both will be alerted. If Dana was making changes to sub-object, then the other user would not be notified, as we had discussed in the presentation. And that concludes our section. Thank you everyone for listening.